Hey guys, it's Christine, a designer here at Zurb. Welcome to part 4 of 6 of our Zero to Website series, where we're going to teach you how to deploy a fully responsive website. Today we're going to talk about scaffolding and how you're going to use this method to set yourself up for success for building any kind of website. If you missed parts 1 through 3 of this series, you're going to want to go back and click on this link and watch those videos before continuing with this lesson. So here at Zurb, we start all of our coding projects with scaffolding. Scaffolding is basically trying to get all of your HTML onto the page with very limited CSS styling. The goal of this is to try to get all your code onto the page so that it's easier to do your visual styling later on. It's totally fine if what you're scaffolding doesn't look exactly like you want it to. We're going to handle all of that in the next step. So today we're going to be scaffolding a portfolio site. Let's dive in. So just so that we can jump right into scaffolding, we are actually going to be using our fellow designer Laurel's portfolio as a template for our lesson today. So this is Laurel's beautiful portfolio. This is a really great design because it's very simple and very clean and has everything that you would need for a portfolio site. So today we're going to be scaffolding up 3 pages. We're going to be coding this home page, an about page, which will include some text about yourself and an image, and also a contact page, which will contain a nice contact form and some encouraging text to, get people to contact you. So if you're just starting out with code, just getting into your text editor and writing code can be a little bit daunting. So before we actually start scaffolding, what we're going to do is just quickly scan this page and think about how we might want to contain all of our content inside of foundation, rows, and columns. This will help minimize the task in your head and hopefully speed up the coding process later on. So let's start with this home page. Taking a quick look at this layout, it looks like we have 3 main sections. At the top, we have a header navigation area. In the middle, we have a gallery area. And then at the very bottom, we have a simple footer with some social media links. So we would contain all 3 of these sections inside of rows. And then in this header nav area, it looks like we only need 1 column, so we'd have 1 column inside of that row. And then in this middle area, we could actually use our foundation block grid to build this out. So we're going to take a mental note here to look up the block grid later when we're coding this. And then at the bottom, similar to our header nav, we're going to have a single column inside of this row as well. So the next step is to think about this page in components. Here we are going to break down every element of this page and think about how we can use foundation's built-in components to make our scaffolding process easier. So just taking a look at this header nav, up at the top we have an image area, and then we have, this will probably be a p tag with some text in it, and then here where these 3 links are, we can actually use foundation's menus to build this out. And then in this middle section, we have this nice gallery going on, and foundation actually has something called a block grid that will easily lay out images for you in a grid like this. And then for our footer, these are simply links laid out in line. We can also use the menu component for this footer area here. Now that we have a solid mental model of our site, we can move right into our code. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to pull up a new project that I created. I titled it Portfolio Scaffold. I know that's very creative. You guys can name it whatever you want. And I'm gonna open up my index.html page really quickly. Just take a look at what's in here. This is the default stuff that comes inside of your index.html page the first time you download Foundation. So I'm actually going to pull this into my text editor. I use Atom. You can use whatever text editor you like. It doesn't really matter. And now I'm actually going to, so this is all the junk that comes by default. And I'm going to remove everything. So we're going to keep everything that's in the head, but everything between the body tags I'm going to take out. So I'm going to select all the stuff and then delete it. And then I'm going to save, and let's take a look at our page now. So now we have a blank canvas where we're going to build out our portfolio site. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our grid. Like we mentioned earlier, we're going to start with the header navigation area, the gallery area, and then the footer area. So all three of those are contained inside of rows. In the header nav area, we have a row with a single column inside of it. And I'm just going to leave this empty for now, and then move on to the gallery section. So here we have another row, and I'm just going to leave it like this for now. We are going to use the block grid to set up this gallery, but the syntax is a little bit tricky, so we are going to get into that a little bit later. And then for our footer, we have another row and single column. So what I like to do when I'm scaffolding is to keep my code clean and readable. So I am going to include some commented headers here so that it's easier for me to find where my sections are. In this top area, I'm going to call it header nav. And then I'm going to call this middle section the gallery. And I'm going to call this the footer. So I'm going to save this, and there's still nothing in here because all of our rows are empty. So now we're going to take a look at each individual component here, and we're just going to throw those into our code. So up at the top in our header nav, we have an image. So I'm going to throw an image tag in here. For the source of the image, I'm going to use placehold.it. I recommend this to everyone because this is very easy to use. We simply copy this link and it will literally create an image for you. So this is a really good tool for scaffolding because you don't have to think about finding images. So I'm actually going to size this to 150 by 150 pixels. And so the cool thing about placehold.it is you can define whatever size image you want just by putting it at the end here. And then next we have some text. I'm just going to use whatever Laurel has in here. Again, you guys can use whatever text you want. Designer and Illustrator. And finally, we have a menu section. So I'm actually going to head over to the Foundation docs. It's foundation.zurb.com/sites/docs. So this is where you can find all of our Foundation components, and there's instructions on how to use them. It's very, very simple. So for our menu component, I'm just going to search for menu. And then this is the menu that we're going to use. It's very simple and stripped down, free of CSS, which is what we want. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it right into my code. I'm going to save this and let's take a look at what that looks like. So there we go. That was super easy. So right now it looks really ugly, I know, but that's okay. In the scaffolding step, we're not going to style. So as much as possible, we are going to stay in our HTML file. But for things like positioning, we do have helper classes. So if you go to our foundation docs and look up helper, you can find some typography helpers. So I'm actually going to use this text center helper class right here. And I'm going to throw it into my column. So now my image and my paragraph is centered, but as you can see, my menu's still in the middle. So this can be fixed by using a helper class that's built into our menus. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select my menu list. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to create a div called menu centered. Centered? Yes. And then paste my menu in here and save. So now my menu is centered. So that was super easy to do. We have all kinds of helper classes that can help you scaffold really quickly and not even touch your CSS. Next, we're going to build out our gallery section. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using our block grid. So this time I'm going to write it out to show you guys and explain to you guys how the block grid works. So the block grid is built right into our foundation grid, so it's really easy to use and works very flexibly within our rows and columns. So in order to create a block grid, we are going to write small, in our row, we're going to write small dash up dash 2, and then medium dash up dash 3. So this is the syntax for creating a block grid, and what this does is it's defining on small sizes and medium sizes how many columns we want in each row. So let's just take a look at how this website looks on a smaller screen. So on a small screen, we're seeing 2 columns in each row. And then on a bigger screen, we have 3 columns in each row. So that's what this syntax is going to do here. So now that we have our block grid classes laid out, we are going to start creating columns. And in each column, we're going to place one image. So we're going to create 9 columns, each with an image inside of it. And I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to make these images 400 by 400 pixels. So I am going to copy this 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, I'm going to save this and let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so this looks kind of overwhelming, but here we are actually looking at our block grid. So as you can see, this block grid is telling that row to contain 3 columns in each row, and then on small, it changes to 2 columns on each row. So as you can see, our gutters are showing, but we actually don't have any spacing between each of the rows. So in Foundation 6.3, we added this new class called column row. So if you, column block. So if you add the class column block to each of these columns, I'm actually going to do this. This will add some margin spacing between each row. So this evens out your grid, and it looks, you know, a lot more balanced now. So we're just gonna leave our gallery like this for now. That's enough for a scaffold. And we are going to move on to our footer area. And this footer area we're simply going to, again, use our foundation menu. So inside of this column, I am going to, again, I want it to be centered. So I'm going to create a menu centered div, and then inside I'm going to have an unordered list with the class of menu. And inside of that menu, I'll have my list items. And for my links, I actually want them to be images. So I am going to place an image inside of here in each of my anchor tags. And I'm going to make it 20 by 20 pixels. I'm just gonna copy and paste this. 3, 4. What's going on? Oh, my bad. I actually made it 20 by 200 pixels. So let's make this 20 by 20. Cool. Now we have a nice scaffolded footer with images as our menu links. And there you have it. This is our scaffolded homepage. So actually now I'm going to go back to this menu and fix it up a little bit. So I only want 3 links: portfolio, about, and contact. So the next thing we are going to do is we're going to create our about page. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click on my index.html and duplicate it, and I'm going to call it about.html. So now I have a second HTML file in my project. I am going to throw this up, move it over. So right now this is the exact same page, but in my about.html page, I am going to remove this gallery section. I'm just gonna delete that. Let's save it. So now all we're left with is our header navigation and our footer. So as you can see, all 3 pages include, you know, the same header and footer sections. So we're only going to replace whatever's in the middle here. So in this next page, we're going to lay out our grid once again. So we can contain all of this inside of a single row. Start with a row, and since we want our content to be side by side, I'm going to use a small -12 and a medium -6 column. That's for this first text area here. And then for the second one, I'm going to use the same sized column. So let's save this. So there's nothing in there yet. And then in this text area, I have a simple header. I'm going to start with an H1. So this will probably be, you know, a simple header that will introduce yourself. And then below it, I have a paragraph tag, and I'm just going to put some lorem text in there. Let's say 35 characters. Let's refresh the page. So there it is. Header's probably a little big, but I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. And then in my second div, I am going to add my image. So again, I'm going to use placehold it. And I don't know, this will be 400 by 300. Is that too big? I think that's fine. So that's how we're gonna leave this page for now. Actually, have to fix these links. About. Okay. Next, we're going to move on to our contact page. So again, I am going to duplicate my about page and I'm going to rename it to contact.html. Just gonna close the rest of these files so I can keep my editor clean. So now I'm in my contact.html page. I've created another file. I'm just gonna pull this up and I am going to remove everything in the middle. Let's head over to our contact page. So again, we have the side-by-side content. We're going to create another row. And then again, we're going to create a small 12, medium 6 column. Because we want, on small, we want these to stack on top of each other. And then on medium, we want them to be side by side. So I'm gonna copy and paste this. We're gonna use the same format. And then on this side here, we want to have a small header. I'm going to use an H2 this time. Hey there. And then some text. And let's save it and take a look. So that's cool. That's how I want it to look. For a scaffold, that's just fine. And then we are going to start building out this contact form. So to start building out this form, I'm going to start with a form tag and make sure that I close it. And then inside of my form tags, so it's really important that you use these form tags because this will tell the browser, hey, everything that's in here is part of one form. So if you have any submit buttons, it'll know that all the inputs in this form are what you're trying to submit. So inside of my form tag, I'm going to create a row. And then the cool thing about forms in Foundation is they work really nicely with the grid. So if you want to contain an input in a certain way, you can lay them out the way that you would you can lay them out with your Foundation grid, and the input will follow whatever the sizing of the column is. So just to give you guys an example, we want to build 2 inputs next to each other like this. So what I'm going to do is I have my row. I'm going to create a medium 6 column. Leave that empty for now. And then I'm going to create another medium 6 column. And inside of these, I'm going to have my labels and inputs. So label for, what is this? Let's call this first name. We're going to keep this simple. I'm going to call this first name. And then now I want an input in here. I'm going to give this the ID of first name. And then I'm just going to copy this and paste this down here, but make sure we change our for attributes. What is this last name? Okay. So just to explain a little bit about how I'm creating these labels and inputs. So we're using this for attribute to link this label to this input field here. So what this will do is it tells the browser, hey, this label is for this input field. So if you click on this label, it will also activate this this input field. So let's actually take a look at what that how that works. Refresh. Cool. So as you can see, if I click on this label, this input field is also selected, and same for the second one. So this is an example of how we can use the foundation grid to create some really nice flexible forms. With this, you can do whatever you want with your fields. You can have 3 input fields next to each other if you wanted to. All you have to do is define the grid to sit in that way. So moving on, we're going to create the rest of these form fields. So we're actually going to want to contain each of these fields in their own row. So after this closing div, I'm going to create another row. I'm just going to create a row column because I know there's only going to be one column in there. So inside I have my label, call this email. ID email. And then I am just going to copy and paste for the rest of these. This is subject. And then for this last one, I am going, since we want it to be a comment box, it's a little bit bigger, I'm going to use the text area tag. And save this. Take a look at what that looks like. And there we have it. We have a nice foundation form. So last but not least, we are going to create our submit button. So head back into your text editor and we're going to create an input. But this time, instead of text, we are creating an input type submit. And I'm going to give it a value submit, and this is how it's going to name the button. Basically, this is the text that's going to show up in our button, and then I'm going to give it a class of button, and this is going to turn this input type submit into a foundation button. So let's save it and take a look at what that looks like. So there we go. That's our entire contact form. And voila, we're done scaffolding. So what we've done is we've just created 3 brand new pages. We have our home page, our about page, and a contact page. And we're done. Now that we have a portfolio site scaffolded, we're ready for visual styling. If anything that I explained in this video today wasn't quite clear enough, or if you have any questions about foundation in general, feel free to leave a comment below and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Next week, we're going to be going over visual styling and going into our CSS to style our website to look the way that we want it to. And I don't want you guys to miss out, so click on the subscribe button right here to get updates about the lesson when it comes out. If you want to learn more about the Foundation framework from the people who built it, feel free to check out our Intro to Foundation course. In this live webinar, you'll learn all about Foundation, its components, and be ready to build your own website in just a couple of hours. So feel free to check out the link in the description below for that course. So that's it for this week. Hope to see you guys again in our next lesson. See ya!